Hello everyone and welcome to another Business Book Club blog. My name's Michelle and this time around I've been reading Ultralearning by Scott Young. Now it was a really interesting book for me because I am a learning and development professional. My whole career really is helping people to learn skills and knowledge better in the workplace. So being someone who's very much focused on personal development, I was really keen to know more about this idea. Now, ultralearning is a really intense, self-directive, immersive way of learning a lot of knowledge and skills on a subject very, very quickly. And in the book, Scott Young explains 3 of the ultralearning projects that he has done, for example, as well as featuring those of others. For example, Scott did an MIT degree in the equivalent of in a year. Now, he didn't actually take MIT lectures as such. He found the curriculum, he found the relevant courses online that he could get hold of, or as video notes, lectures, anything that was as close to the syllabus as possible, and then took exams at the end of the year. He also did language learning projects where he went to different countries for 3 months at a time, knowing nothing of the language and only allowing himself to speak his target language while he was there. So no English at all and starting from nothing. And he was able to build up really good language skills in just 3 months simply from immersing himself in that environment and taking this ultra learning approach. Now, if you talk about ultra learning and learning a lot of stuff in a very short space of time, you might be forgiven for thinking this is about a quick fix. It's not. In fact, it's something quite different. It's about learning how to learn, and it's about creating an immersive environment and gaining a lot of momentum. So rather than taking an hour class once or twice a week, it's about really ramping up the rate at which you learn or study things. And of course, the important thing is that you retain them and are able to use them as well. So as I say, as someone who works in learning and development in a professional capacity, really keen to know if this could offer us any information about how people learn. It's also relevant because, as Scott points out in the book, we're living in a time where medium skilled jobs are disappearing due to automation. And so this ability to teach ourselves, the ability to learn how to learn and to get ourselves upskilled very quickly is going to become an increasingly valuable skill as time goes on. So in this blog, I'll share what I found out. So as well as telling us in the book what ultralearning is and how to do it, the book covers 9 core principles about ultralearning. The first one is meta-learning, so the ability to break down your subject and understand how to learn it. You've also got focus, the importance of managing to achieve focus in the first place, but to also maintain and sustain it. You have directness. This is about making your learning environment as close to the real application environment as possible. Your ability to drill your skills and practice the key skills and knowledge that are going to make you successful. There's also another principle is retrieval, about your ability to recall and retrieve what you've learned. So it's not just enough to learn a huge amount in a small space of time, but actually be able to recall it when you need it too. About being openness to feedback and embracing feedback as a source of learning, as something that's going to make you better. We've got another principle of retention, so not just how to learn, but also how to keep this fresh in your mind over time. So if you spent 3 months in Spain to learn Spanish, for example, and then you go on to Korea or China, how do you make sure you keep that learning alive? The 7th principle is intuition, so how to practice and learn to the point where things become intuitive, so you have a real in-depth knowledge of the subject rather than just a lot of knowledge. You've actually got a real deep understanding. And then the final one is experimentation, about why it's important not to be afraid to try things and experiment in your chosen topic. I'm going to focus on 3 for this video blog because there's a hell of a lot there. So I'm going to focus on meta-learning, directness and retrieval. So the first principle I'm going to look at is meta-learning. So meta-learning is literally learning about learning. So it's not enough just to dive in, start doing exercises in your chosen topic, such as doing listening or learning phrases in the language learning exercise, for example. It's about understanding the different concepts and ideas you need to be able to grasp, to be able to group them together and understand the different levels at play that you need to grasp in order to learn your subject. Scott Young suggests looking for the rate determining step. It's a term he used from chemistry. So this is the concept that if I were to understand it, that were to allow me to learn everything else quicker. So take golf, for example. If I understand the difference that my grip, my stance and my body shape make to my shot, then if I get those principles, then I can apply them equally when I'm learning how to pitch, how to putt, how to drive. If I get those concepts first, it speeds up my ability to learn those other things rather than just diving straight in. Or in language, it's useful to know sentence structure, so subject, verb, object, for example. If I get those concepts, I can then apply it to learning any language and pick languages up a bit more quicker. So it's useful to break these down. So the key things you need to be able to identify are what are the core concepts in your chosen Ultralearning project, what are the facts or bits of knowledge that you need to commit to memory, and what procedures or skills do you need to master in order to be able to learn quickly. Of course, you don't know what you don't know. So, of course, if you don't understand what those different levels or different concepts are, it might be useful to either find out, do a bit of research, or even better, ask somebody who already knows. Now, the next principle we're going to look at is directness in learning. Now, this is one close to my heart because I often speak to my clients about people needing a good reason to learn something. And directness will certainly give you that. So directness is the idea of reducing the distance between the learning environment and the target environment. So reducing the distance between the classroom or the learning environment and the application of what it is that you're looking to do. What I like in this chapter is the idea that rather than the traditional route of learning something first and then going out and attempting to apply your learning and doing it, which is where we have this debate about transfer, what is suggested here is the best way to learn something is to do it. You'll soon figure out what it is that you don't know. You'll climb up that competency staircase and realise what you're missing, and then that gives you great incentive to go out, find out the things that you need to know. This is great because it creates a really keen need, a desire to go out and find what it is that you want to know, but it also makes it relevant too. Now, I think that importance and relevance are two major factors for anyone wanting to learn anything, and directness will do this for you. So for example, let's say you want to learn how to code. If you set yourself a coding project, you can start to try coding. And of course, if you are struggling to create what you want to create, it then gives you incentive to look up the solutions to the problem. Or if you want to speak a language, why not start a conversation with somebody? And if you're struggling to find the words you need and you can't get what you want, then it's a real power and incentive to look up the useful vocabulary and sentences that would make you successful. Now, ideally, you want to immerse yourself in the environment. So in the language learning task I mentioned earlier, the way that this was achieved was by going to the countries concerned, like going to Spain or going to Korea, and completely immersing yourself in that environment. Of course, you may not be able to do that. So having a Skype call with a native speaker could be a way of doing it. Then watching TV programs or listening to podcasts in your target language would be another way of going about it. Of course, if you can't immerse yourself, I don't know, if you're learning brain surgery or how to fly a plane or something, then clearly you couldn't just drive straight in. In that case, you would want to find some sort of simulation for your environment that's as close as humanly possible. So the third interesting concept I'm going to talk about here is retrieval. So of course, if you're going to go through this intense, time-consuming, ultra-learning approach and acquire a lot of knowledge in a short space of time, then it's also really important to make sure you're able to retain it and retrieve it too. Now, an interesting idea in the book was put forward is the difference between two methods of revising or being able to retrieve information. The first one is the kind of typical revision strategy I think a lot of students will be familiar with, which is of course reviewing your course notes to go over lessons that you've learned or notes that you've made. Now, this method gives us the illusion that we've learnt a lot, because when we read back over our notes, everything seems familiar and we're able to easily grasp the concepts that we're reading. This allows us to perceive that we've learnt more than we really have. Now, contrast this to a different method of retrieving information, which is just to sit there with a blank piece of paper and try and recall and write down in as much detail as possible everything you learnt with no prompts at all. This doesn't feel as good because it requires us to struggle to retrieve what we learnt, and we may leave with the impression that we haven't really recalled that much. But this second method cements our learning in our brain much, much better than simply passively reviewing course notes or things that we've learned. So try and add this concept into your retrieval of whatever it is that you're studying. You can try just free recall, so studying something, watching a video, attending a lecture, and just writing down everything you can remember. You can also use things like flashcards, for example, or instead of taking notes, you could write down questions for yourself. So on what date did this happen, or what are the 3 key aspects of this subject? And then when you come back to revise, come back and answer your questions. Again, you may need to grapple or struggle for the answers a little bit, but that very kind of active process will mean that your learning sits much deeper and therefore it's easier to retrieve when you most need it. Needless to say, as someone who works in personal development, I really enjoyed this book. Some of the concepts weren't new to me, but it was nice to hear them backed up by new or different research. But some of the concepts were new. Not only does Scott Young describe some of his own ultralearning projects, he describes that of many other talented learners too. And on the surface, it may seem that these people learning a huge amount in a short space of time are somehow geniuses, and that kind of learning isn't accessible to most of us. But when Scott Young breaks down the concepts of how they did what they did, we quickly begin to see that there's something there that we can all learn and take from. So if you've been trying to learn a topic, or to study for an exam or a qualification, or if you've tried to master a skill and you've been doing it for weeks or months and you haven't got where you want to be, I think this book may be useful for you. It will explain why you've not achieved what you want to achieve yet, and it will also suggest some principles that will help you speed up the speed at which you learn, but also the effectiveness with which you learn too. And for me, that's a really interesting subject. Not only that, but it's inspired me to undertake my own ultra learning project. I've been learning Irish on Duolingo for 200 days now, more than that, and I still can't really speak it. I know some words, some vocab, and a little bit about sentence structure, but I haven't actually done anything with it, and I wouldn't feel confident to speak it at all. So I've signed up for an online course which takes an ultra learning approach and is run by one of the people featured in the book. And I have done more probably with that language in 2 days than I have done in over 200 days of using an app. So that for me is it completely changed the way that I'm approaching what I'm doing. I was taking a very traditional approach using one source, and I've realised now that that's not a great way forward. So if you have something you want to learn, I definitely recommend this book. If you're interested in how to help others learn, this would be good for you too. And as I say, with the uncertain world of work ahead of us, this is a skill that I think we could all benefit from.